Hey, what's up everybody? My name's Paul Murrin, and I run the highcountryguitar.com website. I just finished putting together a 3-part video series on music theory that I've entitled The Least You Need to Know. It seems like there's sort of an eternal debate on online forums and in guitar-related groups on social media about whether or not guitar players should learn music theory. Well, if you're here and you're watching this, I bet you have a pretty good guess as to what I'm going to say about it. I think part of the problem is the phrase music theory. It makes it sound like some big, opaque thing that takes years to learn. And granted, music theory is a pretty deep field, but here's the thing I want to be clear about. You really don't have to learn all the music theory. In fact, you really just need to learn a few basic things that'll get you by in most of the music situations you're going to find yourself in. Like maybe you've heard of a 1-4-5 chord progression. Well, 1-4-5 is a direct reference to something that happens in music theory. And if you know a little bit of theory then, if someone says, hey, this song's a 1-4-5 in the key of E, you'll know what they're talking about. Or if someone says this song's in the key of A, with a little theory knowledge, you might know what chords you might expect to see in that song, and you might even know how to play a passable guitar solo on that song. Or if someone gives you a chord name like D7 sus4, well, with a little bit of theory knowledge, you'll have some clue what they're actually talking about and what that chord's function might be. And when you understand these things a little better, it gets much easier to memorize and internalize music, and really at that point then it allows you to play more from the heart. But even more importantly, as you learn these things and you start to observe the patterns that exist in the songs you're playing, you start to realize over time that your ears start to tune into these things. After a while, you just realize, for example, that you can just listen to a song and sort of hear what the chord progression is. You start to recognize the chords, your fingers just sort of know what to do, and you actually end up not having to think about it all that much when you're actually playing. And eventually you can start to imagine improvised melodies over a chord or a chord progression, and you can compose your own music out of thin air because you can sort of picture what these things are going to sound like in your mind. Some people seem to worry that learning theory will hamper their creativity, and so I want to make it very clear that none of what I'm going to talk about in these 3 videos should be considered rules. Or if we do consider them rules, we do it with the knowledge that rules in music theory are made to be broken. In fact, when I studied music theory in school, my teacher really made a point of saying that they weren't rules. He described them as conventions, just sort of the most conventional things that musicians do all the time when they write chord progressions and that kind of thing, because they know these things are going to sound good. And we're certainly free to break these conventions anytime we want to. Some music that's more conventional might sound a bit simpler. This could be like folk music, country music, that kind of thing. And then the more experimental music gets, like say contemporary jazz or modern classical music, the further these conventions get stretched or even dispensed with altogether. And so when you're writing music or improvising, it's really up to you whether to stick with these conventions or stretch them in your own ways. But I think it's important to have a general understanding of what the conventions are first. So the initial portion of this theory series that I'm putting together is 3 videos long. Each video is 10 or 15 minutes or so, and they're designed to be super easy to follow and easy to understand. There are all kinds of diagrams and animations and audio examples to help you follow along. So with the material that I cover in these first 3 videos, you really should walk away with enough knowledge to get you by in most musical situations that you find yourself in. And you'll also have a super solid foundation for when you are ready to delve into the more complex topics. Over time, I'll be making some add-ons to this series that cover some of the more complex topics that take a little more time to cover. So go ahead and jump into the rest of this series here on YouTube, and when you have a chance, go check out the highcountryguitar.com website. There are a ton of free lessons there and backing tracks and other resources. And I'm just now starting to roll out a series of in-depth courses on specific topics about guitar playing and improvisation and that kind of thing. I'll put links to all of that in the description of this video, and I'll also include a link to some PDF documents that'll help you sort of follow along what I'm talking about in this series.